time for me to do something I haven't done in a long ass time. Hop on a bandwagon. So this is Jackoon. TLDR, he's a ranter who, from what I've been able to gather, has a pretty interesting reputation. Mostly not good due to his apathy and petty grievances with others. I can't go into too many specifics, but should Jackoon happen to see this video, he knows what I'm talking about. And I'm going to reserve my judgment of him since, frankly, this is the only video that I've seen of his, and it'd be unfair of me to make a complete judge of his character from just hearsay and one video. However, what I'm seeing does give me some red flags, which we'll get to in time. Now, most of you who have followed the CC, or more specifically Pkrussl, you likely already know about the drama going around about the allegations regarding Spoctor theory, or just Spoctor in this case, and his sexual misconduct towards fans and all that. If you haven't seen Ponder's video, I'd highly recommend it, as she brings to light the major problems that this whole drama has spun these past few weeks better than I ever could. But if you've already seen the video she's made, as well as a few others that are, well, more of a copy and paste of what she said, but overall send the same message about the allegations being nothing but slander, then welcome to the part where everyone and their mother is making a video on the subject explaining their apologies, as well as the reflections of the community and how they handled the whole situation. Since this is a short video I'm covering, and I've got another major project in the works regarding a certain quad-up, wink wink nudge nudge, I won't be making this video very fancy or anything in terms of edits. This was just something that I wanted to get out because the problems I had with this video Jackoon made. Okay, no more stalling. Roll the crap.
Listen, I'm glad that all of this has been cleared up and that Spoctor's reputation has pretty much been salvaged, but personally, I'm a bit annoyed.
Salvaged? Unfortunately, it's not. I mean, yeah, the evidence proving his innocence is out there for the whole ranting community to see, but that doesn't mean that his reputation is automatically saved. There are still some members of that audience sticking by those claims despite the evidence provided being proved to be unreliable and faulty. Hell, even Atari herself still stands by the evidence that was presented in regards to those allegations. She doesn't stand by the other things that she said, but in her apology video, she claims that she still believes Spoctor committed a crime. If this were a perfect world, and with all the evidence to what was originally brought up against Spoctor were indeed false allegations, then yes, it would mean that Spoctor's online presence would be completely salvaged. But this isn't the case. Even if those allegations placed upon you were proven to be false, the fact that you were given those allegations in the first place raises so many red flags to bigger names on the platform and those outside of it should Spoctor try to move on. This is not something that he can easily come back from.
You actively made everyone believe that you were guilty of all of this, and you used your hormones as an excuse, which made me fucking livid and caused me to make my own video shaming you because of it. And now, I just feel like a dickhead. I feel like a huge dickhead because it turns out this entire time, you had screenshots that proved your innocence. What the fuck? What the fuck, dude? If you had screenshots that proved your innocence, why the fuck would you let Atari and Pkrussl get away with this in the first place, and even go as far as to lie and admit to things you didn't do? In Pkrussl's most recent video, he brings up the point that Spoctor was backed into a corner, and that he would have received even more backlash if he had tried proving his innocence in the first place.
But Parker, Spoctor admitted to all this and apologized. What other option did he have? Could you imagine if he had defended himself, the even further backlash he would have received? It would have been 10 times worse. Would have been 10 times worse. He had no option other than to apologize and admit to doing stuff he didn't actually do, because if he tried to defend himself, it would have made him look terrible.
I'm sorry, Parker, but I completely disagree with that statement. I disagree entirely. If I were in Spoctor's situation, and I was being accused of being a sexual predator, and I had evidence that would pretty much prove my innocence, and make Pkrussl and Atari look like fucking retards, you better fucking believe I'd make a video defending myself using those screenshots. And considering the positive feedback Pkrussl and Pkrussl's videos have gotten, I guarantee that if Spoctor would have just defended himself in the first place, this all could have been resolved within like the first 2 days of this happening. Just fuck, dude. I feel like an asshole.
This was the biggest thing in the video that sent me screaming into my pillow in frustration. Jack, what you would have done in the situation that Spoctor was in is irrelevant. You are not Spoctor. who happens to be a child being accused of sexual abuse towards other children, whom, by the way, are in his age range. I have no idea how old you are. From what I've heard, it's either early to mid-20s, but it really doesn't matter because what you are suggesting is completely unrealistic. Are you oblivious to how the ranting community reacts, or any young community like this reacts, when something like this happens? Are you aware of the mob mentality that goes on in the community you are a part of and how you are contributing to that problem? Like you said before, you made a video completely tearing Spoctor apart for his apology video about the situation, thus feeding into the mentality the mindless sheep were passing around like hot dogs. You didn't think for yourself and look at the situation objectively until someone with more balls than anyone here did. Or tentacles in this case. And oh, it doesn't end there with you, no siree! It's clear that you still want to blame Spoctor for something. I mean, yes, he is guilty of sexual misconduct to some degree, but he did so with provocation towards him from the people who just decided to ruin his life. Essentially what I'm saying here, Jack, is that you're implying that Spoctor is still at fault for not coming out sooner. Let me ask you, how often do rapists get convicted for their crimes? Like, actual rape victims bringing the crime to the light of the justice system and reporting it like we try to encourage them to do, and that the claims being made were indeed legitimate, resulting in the perpetrators being put into prisons for their crimes. You should know that it's not a lot. The same can be said for victims of false allegations of sexual abuse. It's embarrassing, it's degrading, and it reminds those who were affected of a time where the world was against them. And if those allegations weren't proven false by the victims defending themselves and they're already on the list of sexual offenders, then how can they defend themselves at that point?
Oh, but Spoctor's not on a sexual offenders list, so he can still prove himself innocent.
Really? He didn't have the courage to until Ponder's video came out. He was and still is a scared kid who now has to deal with this load for the rest of his life. He now has the courage to defend himself, and he will likely provide his side of the conversation within that thread of screenshots, but he will do so tactfully, unlike the rest of this community. Quick note I want to bring up is that in 2 days after Jackoon's video, Spoctor released a statement saying that he was in fact toyed with, and that most of the evidence that was brought up, that being about 90% of it, were deleted. So even if he did try to bring up those screenshots from his end, the messages from the other person's side of the exchange are gone, making it even more difficult for him to prove his innocence. He was well aware that the screenshots posted as evidence were lies, but knew that if he were to come out and try to defend himself, that he would be in an even worse position. So essentially, this video's existence pretty much proves you wrong right out of the gate. For the rest of the video, you claim that you don't want to put Spoctor down, but that the situation should have been handled better. And you're right. Except that in the case that you're still putting Spoctor down by blaming him for not bringing in the evidence, and that, frankly, he himself probably didn't know he had until the screenshots provided were proven to be more slanderous than anything. This is the biggest problem that I have with the ranting community, and this is something that I believe to be a problem that is fixable, but will take a lot of time to do so. The mob mentality is the biggest concern that can and has been proven to be very damaging to those who choose to make this kind of content and those who choose to watch it. The fact that this audience is so young and impressionable is one thing, and they have their own faults for being as easy to manipulate as demonstrated. But the fact that the majority of what I've seen in regards to these dramas that have happened throughout the years this community has been alive in is that the content creators tell their audience what to think. I'm not saying that every big name in the community does this, but the fact that there are some who actually use their name to tell others what to think under the guise of criticism is very destructive and dangerous. In regards to you, Jack, you're essentially feeding into the problem by fanning those flames. It is clear that you don't want to discuss but to fight and to be angry at someone just because a bigger person said you should. If you felt bad about going along with these allegations, then the smart thing to do would have not been to only acknowledge that the information presented to you was faulty and that you were guilty of following that mob mentality, but also to apologize. Not to go on about what you would have done differently, or how Spoctor is still to blame for not defending himself when he had no courage to do so, and to not fault someone for not being able to defend themselves against serious claims. Try to look at the situation from his perspective, and look at the rest of it objectively. And this goes for everyone else. I cannot stress how important it is for you to think for yourselves. We here in the commentary community went through similar events many years ago, and here we are, a more civil community than we were. Yes, we still have our issues to sort out, but at the very least we can see objectively where the problems lay and how much energy we should put into addressing them. You as a community have the potential to grow and learn from each other, but the minute that something like this happens, whether it be to this scale or smaller, you cannot dogpile onto someone with hatred because someone you like said that they were a horrible person. A wise tiger once said, "Think for yourself." Now, for those who are making content that discuss other individuals and topics, the biggest thing that I'd like to recommend to all of you is to be mindful of how you come across in your content. You do leave an impact, and while I don't expect you to know your audience 100%, and that is difficult to even try, if you know the nature of your audience, then you should apply that knowledge to how you create your content. You're of course free to state your opinions on whatever topic you decide to cover, but give your audience room to think for themselves and encourage them to do so. By doing so, you give your audience the respect of treating them as people and not numbers. I know it seems like a no-brainer, but from what I've seen in the ranting community thus far, it does seem like there are many who tend to forget that. Hopefully you guys will consider what I've said here. Sorry that this was so short and lackluster, but hey, when you got something to say, you find a way to say it. But don't think I'm done with you ranting munchkins just yet. There's more to be said later on down the line. For now, your queen weeb is tired and needs a long nap. Johnny!